My whole life is focused on keeping her as well as I possibly can. That line hits differently when you realize how much of Chuck Norris' life was built on discipline, control, and a carefully maintained image. For decades, he played characters who stood firm, who never wavered, who always seemed to have everything in order. But real life rarely follows that script. Behind the action films, behind Walker, Texas Ranger, behind the reputation that turned him into a cultural icon, there was a story that remained hidden for years. Not because he chose to hide it, but because he didn't even know it existed. It begins in 1962. He was just 22, serving in the U.S. Air Force, already married to Diane Holchek, already a father. From the outside, his life looked stable, structured, predictable. But during that time, he had a brief relationship with a woman named Johanna. A moment that, at the time, probably felt temporary, but would quietly reshape decades of his life. From that relationship, a child was born, Dese Norris, in 1963. And the most striking part of the story is simple. He didn't know. Not for years. Not for decades. Johanna made a decision that defined everything that followed. She chose silence. No calls. No confrontation. No attempt to insert herself into his life. She raised her daughter alone, carrying that truth quietly. And Dese grew up with only part of her story. Then, at 16, everything changed. Not through a dramatic reveal, but through something almost accidental, overhearing a conversation. A name mentioned, a realization that couldn't be ignored. When she asked directly, the truth came out: her father was Chuck Norris. Imagine that moment. Finding out your father isn't gone. He's alive, famous, visible everywhere, and still choosing not to reach out, because her mother asked her not to. And she listened. For more than a decade. No letters. No attempts to get attention. No shortcuts. Just patience. That's what makes this story feel different. In a world where people chase recognition, she did the opposite. She waited. It wasn't until the late 1980s, after Norris's divorce from Diane Holchek, that the situation changed. The reason for staying silent no longer existed. The life she had been told not to disturb had already shifted. So in 1991, she finally acted. Not with anger, not with demands, just a letter, a simple introduction. I'm your daughter. When Norris read it, it didn't unfold like a scandal. It unfolded like something deeply human. Confusion first, shock, then something quieter: recognition. Not through tests or proof, but through presence. When they finally met, he didn't ask for DNA. He didn't hesitate. He saw her and knew. That moment says a lot about both of them, about what was lost, and about what was still possible. There was no public drama, no legal battle, no headlines trying to turn it into something bigger. Just a relationship that began late, but still began. He accepted her fully, not as a complication, not as a mistake to manage, but as family. And from that point on, she was simply his daughter. What stands out isn't just the secret. It's how it was handled when it stopped being one. Years later, in his memoir Against All Odds, My Story, he chose to tell the story himself. No pressure, no exposure forcing his hand. Just a decision to be honest about a part of his life that didn't fit the image people had of him. And even then, nothing about it turned loud. Dese Norris never stepped into the spotlight. No interviews, no attempts to capitalize on the connection. She built her own life, her own career, her own identity. The same quiet strength she showed at 16 stayed with her. That's what makes this story land the way it does. It's not about scandal. It's about time. About a father who missed nearly 30 years without knowing it. And a daughter who knew and still chose patience over disruption. When people look back at Chuck Norris now, they remember the action star, the fighter, the legend. But stories like this shift the focus. Because in the end, it wasn't the movies or the image that defined him most. It was what he did when the truth finally found him.